Well, let's bring in our panel of parliamentary reporters now. Susan Delacourt's a columnist with the Toronto Star, Joël Denis Bellavance, the parliamentary bureau chief for La Presse, and John Ivison's a columnist with the National Post and parliamentary bureau chief for Postmedia. Good to see you all again. Susan, as required, the Prime Minister announced the creation of the independent inquiry into the use of the Emergencies Act to deal with those blockades and protests earlier this year against the COVID-19 restrictions. What questions do you believe the inquiry needs to answer, and should one of them be whether the government was justified in invoking the Act in the first place?
Well, it's been really interesting to watch the reaction to this because, yes, that should be one of the questions. That's why this was put in the legislation, is we don't want governments just declaring emergencies willy-nilly. And so, yes, that should be one of the questions. My question is, are they going to have enough information to make that declaration? Because what we've seen is this was a national security matter. That was why it was invoked. Nobody has been really clear on what that was. The closest we got was the government's, the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor said a few weeks ago that definitely the overthrow of the government was part of that. But we've only heard hints of that. Is Justice Rouleau going to be able to examine that one? Because that's the nub of the question, is what exactly was the national security threat to Canada? And by declaring it now, are they jeopardizing other investigations into this too?
Right. JD, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm wondering whether the Justice Rouleau will have access to cabinet deliberation, because that's where the key debates took place within cabinet, and that will be a key element of the information. As we know, the illegal occupation, as they say, of Ottawa was not the only one that was in the mind of Ottawa when they invoked that law. That was also the blockade on Ambassador Bridge, and Ottawa was facing a lot of pressure from the United States to resolve that issue. And I think the hope by having this kind of commission is that that commission will propose maybe some amendments to the current law, so that, or other laws that are necessary, so that we don't have to invoke that law, the Emergency Act, every now and then to face serious incidents like we had in Ottawa, in downtown Ottawa, and on the bridge of Ambassador Bridge.
John, what do you think? What do you be watching for? What do you think about the terms of reference, the Order in Council, orders for Justice Rouleau?
Well, I think JD's right that this was invoked after we were seeing other protests being cleared without an Emergencies Act. So, what is the justification? I think the government does have to justify the fact that it sort of went nuclear, if you like, when it wasn't apparent that it needed to. I mean, it was pretty late in the day when the thing was invoked, and it looked like it was petering out anyway.
All right. Susan, let me come back to you now. A new report out today on the discrimination and racism and white supremacists in the Canadian forces. The panel notes that military leaders have basically ignored 41 previous panel reports and reviews and 258 recommendations. This was presented today, as I read it, as an existential threat to the future of the military. It doesn't reflect the Canada, a diverse Canada, and fewer Canadians want to join the forces. How much faith do you have that the promises of change will be delivered this time?
I don't know whether I'm dating myself, but I remember a commercial, and it was about consultants, and it said, "Oh, we don't do what we propose, we just propose it." That's what sort of fluttered around my mind when I read this, is that the military has become very good at soliciting advice, just not taking it and not doing it. And that points to a systemic problem all on its own. There's now a small industry in defining problems of the military culture, and the military culture seems impervious to change. So somebody's going to have to crack that nut. Now, Anita Anand is the latest to say that she's going to do this. You're right, the report is an indictment of the military culture, but that's not the first we've seen. And we have so many existential debates about the military right now. For example, is it adequate to a threat like Russia is proposing at the moment to us? And then we have these internal ones as well. So I don't know. Being defense minister and being in charge of Canada's military right now seems itself like an existential exercise.
John Ivison, let me jump to you on this. What do you think of what we saw today?
I hesitate to say this, but I think this time might be different. I mean, I know everybody says that, and it never is different, but I think it might be different this time, in that the whole culture from sexual discrimination through to racism, I mean, it's reached a point where it is existential. I mean, I remember I talked to very senior military guys, 4 or 5 of them, all of whom I expected, because we were essentially talking about war in Ukraine, and all of whom I expected to say, all this stuff is a diversion. We've got to, get on with the business of fighting wars and doing whatever else. They didn't. They said that, we've got to address Putin, but we've also got to deal with these long-standing issues that are acting as a rot on the body politic of the Canadian forces. So I do think that they've reached a point where they just cannot push it off any longer, and something will be enacted on it.
What do you think, Jay? Like, we've all been at this long enough, Joël Denis, that we are constantly reporting on stories about military culture and the change to the. And it makes me wonder if you're in the military, you must be looking around, seeing jobs that are unfilled, seeing people leaving. Seeing the kind of brush that the entire military has been tarred with by these different issues and problems raised. Do you think we're at a tipping point where maybe there is going to be the kind of change needed?
I think so, and I think Antanan is the right person to do that kind of change. She's from ethnocultural communities, if I may say, and she will bring a new perspective to the Defense Department that was not prevalent in the past. And I would say that other organizations have gone through that kind of upheaval. The police organization in Quebec, for example, they went through the same kind of indictment that they don't reflect the current society of Quebec, and this is to a larger scale in the military. And it adds to a litany of problems that we are reporting on in the military, and it comes at a very critical time. The international situation is grave, is worrisome, and the military is called upon to play a bigger role, but it doesn't have currently the tools, I would say, the equipment, but also the resources to face the kind of challenges we're facing with Russia. Right. And so this kind of report does not come at the right time, obviously.
Let's pivot. Let me talk about the Conservative leadership race, Susan. Pierre Poilievre continues to stump across the country to impressive crowds, while his competitors run much lower key operations focused, they say, on recruiting new members. What are your thoughts on how this race is playing out so far, and what are you watching for as we head towards the first leadership debate coming up on May 11th?
It's become a cliche to say it now, but we are talking a lot about those crowds and Pierre Poilievre's crowds, and whether that's just a prohibitive, intimidating force to the other ones too. We're not seeing much of this race publicly except those crowds. So I'm curious to see if there is an actual race at all.
Interesting. John, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that, coming out and saying things like the Bank of Canada is financially illiterate, from no less an authority than Pierre Poilievre, Bachelor of Arts, is something of a. It might please the people who want him to say stuff like that, but I do suspect that it creates a backlash against Poilievre from other Conservatives. And if it becomes anybody but Poilievre, then come this rank ballot, which we know they have, and we know it's the 100 points per riding, you might find that a Brown, Charest, maybe Aitchison, whoever else is in there, forms some kind of alliance against them and has enough votes. At the moment, it would seem as Poilievre's to lose, but who knows? We've seen that. We've seen the front runner lose twice in a row.
Yeah, we have. Joël Denis, a final thought to you on this.
I agree. Pierre Poilievre is attracting a lot of people in his meetings, but I think he needs to start to make some friends within the people who are running against him. And so far, he hasn't made any overture to make sure that if he doesn't win on the first ballot, that he has support on the second and third ballot. So that's a challenge that Mr. Poilievre will be facing. Does he have any friends outside of the crowds that are showing up at his meetings? He needs to make some alliance with other people if he doesn't win on the first ballot.
All right, thank you. We're a little crowd of 4 here, but we're all friends. Thanks for taking time to speak with me tonight, and we'll talk to everybody later. Take care.